Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 123 verse 1 from the New King James Bible says this, "Unto you I lift my eyes, O you who dwell in the heavens." I'm with Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. Now, Itamar, what is Palestinian Media Watch?
Since 1996, we've been following everything that happens in the Palestinian Authority. We look at the statements and activities of the Palestinian leaders. We look at what's happening in the schools, and again, both what they're learning, what they're teaching, and the activities of the children in the schools. And what we've learned is this is the real Palestinian Authority. What they come to foreign countries, when they go to the European Union or to London or to Washington, and they present one face, that's not really who they are. What they really are is the world of hate and terror, and that's what they teach their children, and that's what they teach their people.
So people are being deceived, really, a face for the media, but then a face for real life.
Absolutely being deceived. In fact, the name of the book that I wrote with a colleague here in the office was Deception, Betraying the Peace Process. Because from the first moment that we started following, in 1996 was really just 3 years after the signing of the Oslo Accords, already then we saw that there were different messages. The world, they were telling, we want peace with Israel, two-state solution, to their own people from the first day. They were glorifying terror, honoring terror, and telling their people that the end of this process is Palestine replacing Israel. There will be no Israel. This is the Palestinian Authority, not just Hamas. This is the Palestinian Authority.
Now at the moment there's a ceasefire deal and a hostage release and a Palestinian prisoner release. Who are some of the prisoners being released at the moment?
Okay, so some of the prisoners, people who are serving 35 life sentences in jail. We're talking about people who were involved in organizing mass murder, suicide bombings. Altogether, over 300 of them, more than that, I forget the exact number now, are actually murderers or people who plan murder, that they're going to be walking the streets again. And of course, it's not just immoral and unethical to release murderers and of course to the families whose loved ones were killed. This is a betrayal because you're releasing the people who killed their parents, their children, and to walk the streets again and become Palestinian heroes. So it's a betrayal of them, but even worse than that, it's a betrayal of the people who are going to be killed in the future. Because every time we have released terrorists coerced in an extortion deal, like this is an extortion deal, every time Palestinians have kidnapped Israelis and we've released terrorists, every time we've paid with a lot of blood. October 7th was a direct result of Israel giving into extortion of the Gilad Shalit. Gilad Shalit was an Israeli soldier who was kidnapped. Israel gave in and released 1,024 terrorists. And those 1,024 were the ones, not only did they kill many Israelis in the years afterwards, but they're the ones who planned and actually did the October 7th massacre. So we lost thousands of people because of that exchange. And then we released 1,024. Now we're going to be releasing thousands. And that's the tragedy of what's happening now. This is extortion. We need to get our hostages free. They deserve to be free. They deserve to have a life. But we know that the terrorists that we're releasing are going to probably kill many, many more.
How are these terrorists treated within the Palestinian Authority when they get back?
Absolutely like heroes. They're picked up on their shoulders and they're going to the streets. And not just by Hamas, by the Palestinian population, by the Palestinian Authority. There was an interview yesterday on TV with one of the heads of with the mayor of Tulkarem, and that's a Palestinian city. And he said, we're going to treat these people, we're going to give them a hero's welcome. We're going to treat them as they should. Another Palestinian leader said, these people they are the great people. We're going to honor them. There has not been one Palestinian Authority leader or individual who's been interviewed who said something negative about these terrorist murderers. Just the opposite. In fact, I'll go even farther. There's a tendency and there's a mistake around the world to differentiate between the Hamas and Fatah and the Palestinian Authority, which is Fatah. It's as if the Fatah and the PA are moderate and the Hamas is extreme. Let me tell you, the Palestinian Authority has completely been supportive of what happened on October 7th. They've defended it. They've honored it. They've called it a day of joy and heroism. The only thing that they're upset about October 7th is that they didn't do it. In other words, they're upset that Hamas got the credit. Hamas went all the way up in the polls. And that's the only reason that the Palestinian Authority is upset with October 7th.
How do the families of the victims of terror feel about this?
So the families are very torn. The families of victims of terror are very torn because on the one hand, they're thrilled, like everyone is, to see the hostages come out and breathe again and be alive again. So many hostages were murdered there. And to see the hostages walk, there's no one who isn't celebrating that. And many of them have spoken on interviews, and they've said it's an outrage that the government couldn't get a better deal, and that the murder of my brother and my father and my son, is walking free, and that's the outrage. On the other hand, we're thrilled that these people are getting out. So they're angry at the government, not for freeing the hostages, but for not getting a better deal.
Must be very, very difficult. Now, we've spoken before, so tell us about pay to slay.
Okay, so pay for slay. So like I said, there's no real difference. The Palestinian Authority and Hamas both support terror. And one of the most prominent ways in which the Palestinian Authority promotes terror is by rewarding every single terrorist who goes to jail. A terrorist could have murdered 50 or 60 people in suicide bombings, like, for example, Abdallah Barghouti. He was a bomb builder for Hamas. He killed 67 people. His bombs killed 67 Israelis. He's serving the longest sentence. He's serving 67 life sentences. And he's already got over $300,000 in salary from the Palestinian Authority. He was a Hamas bomb maker, but the PA is still paying him a salary. The day he was arrested, he started getting a salary. The salary kept going up. The salary eventually reaches Palestinian Authority, pays terrorists in prison, eventually 12,000 shekel, which is about $3,500 US dollars. So it's a month. Now, you have to understand, $3,500 US dollars when the average Palestinian salary is less than $1,000 a month. So you're talking about almost 4 times the average Palestinian salary. The PA is rewarding terrorists in prison. The PA today probably spends, I would say, about $400 million US dollars a year. $400 million to reward terror. And countries around the world, Western countries, continue to fund the Palestinian Authority. It's shocking. It's outrageous. This is a terror-supporting entity. It's a terrorist entity. And yet the world continues to support the Palestinian Authority.
So we have people today, they've been in prison for many years, they've been paid while they're in prison, and now they've been released in this deal?
Yes, they are. The person who's been in jail the longest, 2 or 3 of them are actually going out of jail with over 2 million shekels in their accounts, and there are hundreds, I think it was 360 when we checked, who are going out as millionaires, as Palestinian millionaires. And you have to understand, a million shekel in the Palestinian Authority means that they're set for life. It means Palestinian Authority, by the way, in addition, they give them a grant when they leave prison. It can be as high as $25,000 just as an adjustment grant. So that's in addition to the millions. They get $25,000. In addition, they don't have to pay taxes. They get free education for them and for their children, free health care. They don't have to pay taxes on their car. Ordinarily, cars are heavily taxed. They don't have to pay taxes. They are literally treated as royalty. Murderers of Israeli civilians are treated as royalty by the Palestinian Authority, and the entire Palestinian population pays for this out of their pockets.
Now, many Palestinians live in poverty, so when this is offered to you, it's worth it, really, isn't it?
Exactly. It turns out to be an incredible motivation for terror. It's a motivation, and it's also, I would say, it's a support. In other words, even if a person says, I'm not going to kill just to get the money, but he'll say, I'll kill because I know if I'm arrested and go to jail, my family will be taken care of, and I will eventually get out in some hostage deal. They all believe it. They all believe they're going to get out in a hostage deal. And when I get out, I'll be a rich person. So it's a guarantee for them. Either I kill and I don't get arrested, or I kill and I get arrested. Either way, I'm a winner.
And of course, it actually encourages more hostage taking as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The first time that we gave away, that we exchanged Israelis hostages for prisoners, led directly to the Gilad Shalit deal, led directly to other hostage taking, and led directly to October 7th. In other words, until we are going to break this cycle, it's going to keep going, because it's very hard to protect. As soon as this deal is over, and let's, please God, we should get every one of our hostages out there, that's the day that both Hamas and Fatah and the Palestinian Authority and all the factions are going to be planning to kidnap another Israeli.
So do they pay these people in prison over and above their own policemen, their own teachers and things like that? And where does actually all this money come from?
So first of all, they pay them far more than they pay their teachers and their policemen, far, far more. They're really the highest paid people. The ones who are getting higher are possibly the ministers in government and those, but they're paying, like I said, the average Palestinian salary is less than $1,000 a month, and these are being paid, at the end of the scale. When they're there in jail long enough, they're getting paid $3,500 a month. So everybody knows that these are the best salaries.
If you go out as a terrorist, but you're actually killed, does your family get paid?
Absolutely. Suicide bombers who killed dozens of Israelis, the day that they are killed, they get recognized by the Palestinian Authority as what they call a martyr, a holy martyr, someone who died for Allah. This is important. They present killing Israelis as a religious Islamic mission. The term that they use, shaheed, means Allah is witness that you died for him. So if a suicide bomber goes into a bus and murders 15 civilians, 10 civilians, as happened dozens and dozens of times tragically during various periods of Palestinian Authority terror, the Palestinian Authority immediately categorizes that suicide bomber as a shaheed, as someone who is died for Allah, a religious act. This is what Islam wanted you to do, to kill those infidels. That's what they're saying. And because you did this infidel act, we're going to reward your family 1,400 shekels for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives, yes.
So where's all this money coming from?
So this money, until we at Palestinian Media Watch discovered this money was coming directly from all the Western countries, because everybody was giving the money to the Palestinian Authority directly, and from their general budget, they were paying these salaries. After we discovered this in 2011, and we went literally to all the parliaments, it was in British Parliament, Norwegian Parliament, the Dutch Parliament, went all the way. It was in Congress, showed them all the facts and all the proof. The countries decided, most of them, decided that they would stop giving money directly to the Palestinian Authority, but they would fund what they call projects. So some would fund teachers, some would fund schools, some would fund building infrastructure. And here's the great tragedy. What they knew that if they were paying the teachers, the Palestinian Authority then had money to pay the terrorists in jail. And that's where the hypocrisy of the Western countries came in. Money, of course, is fungible. And if you're paying the teachers and you know that they're giving $350, $400 million to terrorists a year, you're actually funding those terrorists, even if you want to put your head in the ground and pretend you're not doing it.
Now, there was a report from the Gilad Shalit prisoner release that 82% returned back to terror. How worrying is this for the Israelis on the street?
Everyone's concerned about it. Everybody knows that the terrorists come back. Everybody knows that Yahya Sinwar, who orchestrated the October 7th, was released in the Gilad Shalit deal. He had a life sentence. He was never supposed to see the light of day. We let him out, and look what he did. He put together this band of monsters in the Gaza Strip who committed the October 7th atrocities. Everything was planned. The rapes were planned. Everything was planned. I say the rapes were planned even because Palestinian Media Watch, we were given actually by the army, we saw documents that were found on the terrorists who were captured. And they had, among other things, they had pages of phrases, of expressions that they were taught how to say in Hebrew. And they were taught, raise your hands. They were taught, lie down. They were taught, one of them was, spread your legs. Why was that expression on the list for the Hamas? They're telling people to spread their legs, telling women to spread their legs. So everything was planned, including the rapes were planned. So, and this was Hamas, and these people got out in the Shalit deal. So everybody's concerned about this. What's happening here is you have a dilemma. You have the families of these young Israelis and these young Israeli soldier women and young Israeli and people who, brothers and sisters who were hijacked, and they are on the news every night. They are on the news every night and saying to the government, give everything, do what you can. And the pressure, the emotional pressure of the families is what has, unfortunately, weakened the government. And I say unfortunately weakened the government because had these families, in my opinion, directed their anger, not at the Israeli government, but at the European countries, the United States, why are you negotiating? Why is Qatar? Why is Qatar, who's standing behind this, who funded Hamas all these years, why is Qatar having a status? Why don't you all break off diplomatic relations with Qatar? Why don't you tell Qatar, you are persona non grata, we want your diplomats out of our country? Qatar could have forced Hamas. And I think that was the big mistake, because I think we could have gotten our hostages back without having to free so many terrorists. We would have had to free some as a symbolic gesture. But the problem was that the families in Israel were misguided. Of course, I don't blame them. They were desperate, but had they directed their ire and anger at the Western countries who had relations with Qatar and forced them to put pressure on Qatar, I think we could have gotten a deal without having to go through the horror of releasing so many mass murderers who we know are going to go and murder again.
Mm. Now, October the 7th was a massacre. Was it a genocide?
October 7th was October 7th, and I don't think we have to categorize it. It was a genocide is when you're planning to wipe out an entire people. Now, I'll go further step, though. If we read the Hamas writings and we listen to the Palestinian Authority, we know that genocide is on their agenda. Hamas, in their charter, for example, there's an Islamic tradition that says the hour of resurrection won't come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. Extermination of the Jews, that's a condition for redemption of humanity in this Islamic tradition, the Hadith. Hamas put that in their charter, and they introduced that phrase with the following: Hamas is looking forward to implement Allah's promise, however long it may take. And what's the promise? The promise of the extermination of the Jews. So we know that Hamas believes in the extermination of Jews. In fact, there was also, Hamas once put on Hamas TV a big poster, and it said, killing Jews is the worship of Allah. In other words, this is the way Hamas sees it. Now, it's not just Hamas, and this is the key. 5 times in the last few months on official Palestinian Authority controlled, owned Palestinian Authority TV, including twice in January 2025, preachers went on TV, prayed to Allah with the following words: Allah, count the Jews one by one, kill them one by one, don't leave even one. That's genocide. That's extermination. That's Hitler. That's Nazism. And this is on official Palestinian Authority TV, which is funded by the Western countries because they're funding the Palestinian Authority. They're funding Palestinian TV. They're funding the salaries of Palestinian workers. All these people on TV who are making those speeches, these Palestinian Authority officials who are calling for extermination of Jews, are funded by salaries which are paid for by the Western countries. They say, okay, we're not going to support the PA, we're going to pay the salaries of the civil servants. Well, those religious figures are the civil servants who they're paying their salaries. So that's the absurd here. You've got the Palestinian Authority calling for genocide, justifying genocide, presenting genocide and extermination of Jews as an Islamic value, and it's being paid for by the West.
Sounds very horrific and very scary. Israelis on the street must be very, very scared. We've obviously had a terrorist attack this morning as well.
Israelis are very concerned. Israelis aren't scared. Israelis have a lot of confidence and trust in our people. And after the mistakes of October 7th, we have trust in our army, which has fought brilliantly considering their constraints that the army had on it. So we're not afraid. We're concerned. We want our army to have a free hand to go and get the terrorists in their cells, in their hideouts before they come out toward us. And I believe that's the Israeli plan right now. In the past, pre-October 7th, we were in a little bit of a naive political outlook and military outlook. We felt, okay, we can primarily stop them before they reach us, and we have to listen and find out what their plans are. Today, that's not the attitude. Today, the attitude is we're not going to wait. We're not going to listen for their plans. When we know where they are, we're going to go get them, and we're going to destroy them in their cells where they are. And that's what the plan is now for Judea and Samaria. The plan is to keep fighting, keep attacking, go after them until they all realize that their terror is pointless and useless. And we're going to go back. The idea is to go back to the situation that we had, let's say, pre-Oslo Accords, when we had very, very minimal and sporadic terror. And that was because Israel was in all the Palestinian cities, and we're going to have to be back in those cities. Those cities are hotbeds of terror. We're going to have to go back into those cities, establish ourselves, and not allow terror to come and get us.
Has October the 7th affected you and your family?
October 7th, aside from the horror of feeling the pain of all the families and the destruction, the families who were killed and the hostages, on a personal level, my 3 sons have all served in the army, in reserves. None of them are soldiers. One is a computer programmer, one is a psychologist, one's a lawyer, and the 3 of them have all left their families. Altogether, I would say close to 300 days they have served in the army. So, again, imagine just normative people going about their work in their law firm and, having patients, and all of a sudden they're all, they're given their M16s, and they're going out and say, okay, we have to fight, we have to protect our people. And they do it willingly. They do it happily. This is what we have to do because we understand we're dealing with monsters who want to destroy the Jewish people. And my son-in-law has served even more. He was drafted on October 7th. Literally, by 7:30 in the morning, they called him up. He's a battalion commander in paratroopers, and he has not been discharged yet from the Army. He fought in the Gaza envelope, as they call it, in the towns around Gaza, cleaning out the terrorists right after October 7th. And then he fought in the Gaza Strip, and then he fought in Lebanon. And now he's back at his desk, but he's not discharged because they want to keep him for regular updates. And for the moment that he might be needed again, he has to be available. So we have my son-in-law. I mean, all of the children have suffered with their parents gone. My son-in-law, of course, because it's been the longest period, his four young daughters, the oldest one is 10. The 10-year-old has become a second, a very major caretaker because her mother is a school principal and the schools have to run because the kids have to, need a normalcy. So the father's away in reserves, the mother's in school, and the 10-year-old became a very active caretaker, cleaning the house sometimes, preparing dinner. She would pick up her siblings from school and from kindergarten, walk them home while the mother was still at her school, and she would prepare lunches for them. So it's impacted tremendously, and everybody has felt the pain, and everybody's also grown.
What is your prayer for Israel today?
My prayer for Israel today is one of the prayers that we repeat very often in Jewish tradition from the Psalms. God will give his people strength, and God will give his people peace. You don't get peace by compromising with genocidal monsters like the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. You get peace when you're strong, and when they know you're strong, and when you go after them to the point where they say, okay, let's give up, we can't fight them anymore. So I'm praying for strength and for our leadership to have the strength to go and to not keep giving in to ridiculous ceasefires, but to go destroy them, and only through strength will we have peace.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Our website is, the name of the organization, of course, is Palestinian Media Watch, and our website is palwatch.org, and we also have a very active Twitter account you should follow. We send out tweets sometimes a number of times a day with all the latest, that sometimes shocking things coming from the Palestinian Authority.
Okay, Itamar, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.